All right, going to call this meeting to order. First up, roll call.
Councilmember Clark.
Yes.
Councilmember Palumbi.
Yes.
Councilmember Graves.
Here.
Councilmember Saper.
Here.
Councilmember Smith.
I'm here too.
Oh, I'm going out of order.
Oh, got it. Okay.
Councilmember Fitzgerald.
Here.
Councilmember Roberts.
Here.
Councilmember Tall.
All right,
Here.
next up. There we go. Are we all roll call? We're all here. There we go.
Will this be the order for the rest of the meeting?
No, it will not.
Oh, so confused.
It's,
Okay.
It's just a quiz here. All right, next up, Pledge of Allegiance tonight will be led by Councilmember Clark. Pledge of Allegiance. I'm just going what's on my sheet. What am I doing here? Is it Councilmember Clark tonight?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
it's you tonight. I just follow orders from the clerk's office.
It should be.
All right, next up. We're switching things up tonight. It'll be good. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor, please say yes.
Yes. Yes.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. Next up, comments from the public. Anyone from the public wishing to speak this evening? Good evening. Oh,
It's 26th Avenue.
gotcha.
Pretty excited that the library gets 2-hour parking over there because they have a parking lot, but they have trouble with parking apparently. 26th Street still has issues with parking on a regular. Can we get some permit parking or 2-hour parking or both? Where you can have people visit, you can come home to a parking spot? Thank you.
Thank you. Link City, if someone's asking about internet connection. Any further comments from the public? Seeing, good evening. Come on up.
Good evening.
What's going on there?
I'm Leonard Marshall. I live at 1608 Orleans Circle.
I got you.
Okay. And one of the things I'm concerned about is the safety of our community. We are very, very safe. I would give us a grade of A. We are one of the best communities to live in the Northland. I do commend the city council, the mayor, the police department. They've made us an extremely safe community. But be advised, there's an instrument called a Glock switch that you can look up on the internet that will convert a pistol into shooting 100 miles within 3 seconds. The ATF did a test. In 2.33 seconds, they shot 50 rounds off by utilization of a device that is the size of a quarter. So let's make certain we don't allow anything like this in our community. Our department has done a good job of keeping our community safe. My hat is off to Officer Vasquez, who unfortunately lost his life. He was a valiant gentleman. I had the chance to meet him. Let's keep our community 100% safe. We have a good high school. We have good grade schools. We have good neighbors in our community. We have a capable mayor. The mayor before him was a very capable person. Let's keep our community safe. Each one, look out for your neighbor. Let's utilize the internet to contact each and every one of us. We have the next door that is on the internet that lets us know what is going on in our communities. Let's ally with each other to keep NKC totally and completely safe. My hands are off to the community. I love this community. I'm very sure that you do also. Let's get to know each other. We are a community. We are family. We are friends. We love each other. God bless you.
Thank you. That was really loud. There we go. Further public comments? Seeing none. Next item is consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
Opposed? No. Motion carries. Next item, number 12, KC Streetcar North Rail Feasibility Study Presentation. It says Kim, but I believe we're going straight to you. Jeff.
All right, thank you. Good evening, Jeff McCarroll with Kimley Horn. Here to give a update on the, kind of feedback there, on the North Rail proposal and the plan that we're looking at and some of the comments and feedbacks we've had through this process. Pardon me. We'll start today with a review of some of the alternatives that we've looked at. Some of these you saw when we were at a work session a few months ago. We'll talk a little bit about station locations, where we could anticipate stops along these, although they're not set in stone at this time, just some ideas of those general locations. We'll talk about the public outreach we've had. We had an online meeting that was open in May with some great feedback. And then we actually had an open house in public over the YMCA in late June. Talk about some cost estimates for where we're standing on some of the options and some of those revenue projections that could be generated locally here through Transportation Development District. And then kind of go through lastly some of those next steps as we begin to bring this stage of this study to a close. As a reminder, south of the river, we actually had two alternatives that we were advancing to additional study. One was what we call the 3rd and 5th Street couplet. This basically took the loop that's around the river market and extended it eastward to Route 9. The other option is to maintain two-way traffic on 3rd Street from the corner of 3rd and Grand over to Route 9 to cross the Heart of America Bridge. Crossing the Heart of America Bridge, we actually had two alternatives as well. Both options that we're evaluating at this time maintain the multi-use trail that's on the east side of the bridge. One option keeps the new streetcar line. This would be a bidirectional or two-way line. It would actually be on the east side between and provide a buffer between that multi-use trail and the traveling lanes. We would shift the traveling lanes to the west. The other option would be to construct it on the west side with a new streetcar facility on that, again, keeping the multi-use trail that exists today on the east side. Finally, in North Kansas City, two options that were advanced. One was along Burlington. This one, you might recall we discussed, was we would be actually having dedicated streetcar lanes on Burlington and the median. We would actually reduce travel lanes for vehicles down to 2 lanes in each direction. The other option is Swift, where we would have shared lanes on that road with obviously a lot less traffic volume than Burlington has today to facilitate the movements there.
Councilmember Smith.
Yes.
Paul's right there. Did you just say Burlington down to 2 lanes of travel each way?
Correct, from 3 lanes in each direction to 2 lanes in each direction.
Okay, and then the Swift option, we've seen renderings of a dedicated lane. Is that off the table now?
So there's a lot of different options that could advance on Swift. What we're looking at right now is to actually have a shared lane with traffic much like we have on Main Street today. The volumes are lower than they are on Main Street today. That gives us a lot of flexibility that as these plans progress, we could accommodate and look at parking. We've got some loading dock issues that we can work with the adjacent buildings on, and then what accommodations we might want with bicycles.
Okay, thank you. I was under the impression with Burlington that we would not lose travel lanes for traffic. This is the first time I'm hearing that, so thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Councilmember Saber.
What has MoDOT said about reducing the travel lanes on their state highway?
They would, they see, I think one of the comments best said for MoDOT is they look at that and the more changes you take along those paths, the less it looks like a MoDOT facility and more like a city street, which begs and begins that questions of if you make those changes, would that actually still be a MoDOT route or not? So they haven't concretely weighed in one option over the other, but just understanding what those implications are if you go down that path. Mm-hmm. Talk a little bit about potential station locations, and actually go back here on this map. It will show where we're looking at. See if I can see those well enough here. On Burlington, we would have approximately 5 stations, and on Swift, looking at 6 stations along that route. just because of the jog over that we're taking as you go from the Heart of America Bridge over to there. Yes?
When you say stations, how large, what's the footprint of the station?
They'd be similar to what you see today on Main Street in Kansas City, Missouri. The exact footprint, 80 to 100 square feet typically.
I'm just wondering where we would put that, for instance, at 23rd, where we've got new development going.
So some of those cases might be where you pull in and actually take out a few parking spaces that are on the street. You could accommodate it that way in those locations. None of these, we're really looking at acquiring new right-of-way that isn't already within the city or the state's control to provide those. On Burlington, they would actually be accommodated in the median. Swift, it would more likely be curbside in those locations. The difference between the two really comes to what we see as that, what we call a walk shed, if you will. When you look from the stations, and we have here shown in Burlington, what is a 5-minute or 10-minute walk between the different locations? And we'll flip back and forth here so you can kind of see the difference. The Swift alignment picks up a lot more of the developed portions of North Kansas City. We have limits on the east side with the railroad yards and tracks. So the Burlington improvement, as shown here, not quite as far into the city that we can provide that access. That means the Swift alignment really does provide better accommodations to a lot of the businesses and a lot of the residents in North Kansas City. We'll summarize some public outreach findings that we've had. We've had a series of focus group meetings held earlier. We really met with business owners, met with economic development, met with concerned citizens, and really had some strong consensus coming out of there. There was a strong consensus on Swift over Burlington as that preferred alignment. Likewise, there was a preference for the east side of the HOA bridge to provide that new facility versus the west. And meeting with some of the property and representatives south of the river in Kansas City, there was that preference for the 3rd and 5th Street couplet versus two-way traffic on 3rd Street also. We had an online forum as well using software called Public Coordinate, which was an interactive map where people could go in, zoom in, place comments, actually respond to other comments as well. We had more than 300 comments on Public Coordinate, and we had a survey that was attached to that as well, and we had more than 400 responses to that. Similar to the focus groups, respondents overwhelmingly were in favor of Swift over Burlington. We were able to parse out those people who resided in North Kansas City or worked in North Kansas City versus the general population that was responding to these. And it was even stronger for North Kansas City residents and employees. The survey did respond that suggests the streetcar would mostly be used for entertainment or shopping or restaurant purposes. Very similar to what we see on the Main Street line today, so it's not necessarily a commuter driven project. Commuters still could maintain that, still have a lot of options, particularly if you live in North Kansas City close to the line. If you're working in downtown Kansas City, a lot of options there. Yes, sir.
Do you know roughly what the commuter rate is downtown right now?
I don't have that handy with me right now. With the public open house, we actually gave people some information, not only what those options were, but some of the, what are those measures of effectiveness, what were the costs. They took a look at those elements. And they were given the option to actually provide and tag what their preferences is. South of the river, the 3rd and 5th Street couplet was favored somewhat from a vote of 30-6 from those who were at the meeting. The Missouri River crossing, 39-3 on the east side versus the west. And then in North Kansas City, it was a 46-12 between Swift favored over Burlington. Subsequent to that open house, there was a lot of interest from the public that said, you know, we weren't able to get there, so we Kansas City Streetcar Authority put online some polls, and we saw, again, that similar response rate. Swift being preferred over Burlington, the east side of the HOA bridge over the west, and that 3rd and 5th couplet over 3rd Street two-way. So with each of these groups that we had, the focus group meetings, the online public meeting that we had, the in-person public meeting, and the subsequent survey, preferences continued throughout with a very common theme of what was preferred. Step into cost estimates, and we'll talk about both capital costs as well as the operating and maintenance. So capital being a bit expenditure, but that operating and maintenance, what needs to be funded year after year through this process. The 3rd and 5th couplet, if we kind of break this down, there's a lot of information up on this slide, is estimated in today's dollars to be just under $29 million versus the 3rd Street two-way being about $25 million. The east side of the HOA bridge is more expensive at about $33 million to actually provide that. 2 reasons for that, and the west side about $22 million. Yes, sir.
Sorry, middle of a graph, but like, were these, none of these costs were presented when asking for preferences, right?
They were presented at the public open house. They were shown.
Okay,
Yep.
so they were shown the maps of the HOA bridge and told one was $10 million more expensive and it was still voted?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
The big difference on the HOA bridge, 2 elements, we would have to redo some of the drainage on the bridge as we slid the traffic lanes over. But also the ramps going from 3rd Street up onto the HOA bridge would have to be widened. So there's just more structural costs on that option to make that happen. Burlington was approximately $130 million, and Swift, being a longer corridor, as you jog over from Burlington to Swift, was about $143 million. The other component of cost that's out there, by the way, that $130 and $143 million also includes purchasing the actual streetcar vehicles that would run up and down this facility also. So it is it's not just the cost per mile there, but also the actual vehicles in that option. Being a longer route with a premium service for streetcar running every 10 minutes, the Swift alignment would require an additional vehicle. And lastly, up there is a vehicle.
One question.
Councilmember
Yes,
Saper.
Would you expand your existing vehicle maintenance facility or put it elsewhere?
So that, great question. The physical space that's available for the current vehicle maintenance facility right there at HOA and 3rd Street, it's actually getting expanded and kind of hitting the, just about the capacity of what it is. So by the time you add the additional vehicles here, a new facility would be needed somewhere. We haven't necessarily identified that location. Is it in North Kansas City? Is it Kansas City or a different location? It would be what you would consider a light maintenance facility. It wouldn't do some of the heavy maintenance activities. You would still use the facility here. But the cleaning, the sanitation, the changing of the crews, elements like that would occur at that location. So all total, as you add up this, we're looking at cost today, capital cost expenditures that range from about $195 million to $220 million, depending on which alternative and which option you pick in each of those locations.
Councilmember Saper.
How solid are those costs?
So I would say they are solid today. There's a contingency and several, a rather large contingency put in those to make sure that we're not being too conservative or too aggressive on those projections. But I would also say that we recognize that over the past year to 2 years, we've seen some interesting inflationary things happen with construction, so we'll have to watch those.
I'm surprised at those numbers because my napkin paper calculations put it closer to 300 million. You've got it down to 222. That's why I asked how solid those are.
Yep. So we feel very confident based on some of the cost estimates we compared with what Kansas City Streetcar Authority is seeing today with some of their construction projects, industry averages throughout the nation, what people are finding for the actual vehicles. We've got a fair degree of confidence where we're at. So.
Councilmember Toll.
In the work that you've already done on the streetcar line, do you find that the capital costs, which are always large numbers, are largely covered by outside federal grants and other numbers? Should the city be concerning themselves mostly with the upkeep costs?
Great question. We'll hit on that here in a little bit. Quite often, the federal grants, if you read the language of the federal grants, they'll claim they can provide an 80% match. In reality, those are competitive grants, and quite often it's closer to a 50-50 match, where local communities come up with close to that 50% match through some means. Doesn't mean it's all a local municipality. It could be a combination of local municipalities as well as state funds or other funding mechanisms. So it's, there's generally quite often several parties involved in the final funding, but generally the local entities in some means or fashion is coming up with close to that 50% of the cost to be competitive. So on those grants, because there's more applications for those federal projects, and there's money that goes around every year. Operation and maintenance is an ongoing project. This is typically borne more by the local communities. The SWIFT alignment, being a longer alignment, could range anywhere from about 4.7 to 7.9 million a year in today's dollars, really based on the frequency. Are we running a 10-minute headway up to a 20-minute headway between the trains? That is really what that cost difference comes down to. The Burlington alignment would be a little bit less, being a shorter route, 3.2 to 6.3 million dollars. Put this slide together, there's a lot of information up here, but when we compared and started to look at the different options, we had a lot of criteria. What we selected here are those criteria as you screen and look at these two options in which there is a difference. That's notable as you look it out. South of the river, the 3rd and 5th Street actually provided a better facilitation for bicycles, given that you're not trying to put 2 tracks on 3rd Street, which is a designated bicycle track today. From an economic development, the 3rd and 5th couplet also was seen as a preferred option because it opened up more to the Columbus Park neighborhood in particular on the east side of Route 9. The capital cost, however, that 3rd, 5th couplet is the more expensive option. The 2-way on 3rd Street, because we're just really dealing with one roadway there, would have a lower cost. For the HOA bridge, the west alignment actually has just narrowly one advantage to it in that we don't have to worry about taking the streetcar underneath the Route 9 bridge structure there. It's not quite as tall as we would like it, although it's got clearance that's actually above what we have today in some locations along Main Street. The vehicular impacts actually a little bit better on the east side than the west, mostly because of what happens in North Kansas City. If we were to go up the east side, we would still have to cross Route 9 at some point, even to go into the median, and that would delay traffic on Route 9, or to go over to Swift. We're crossing that traffic there. That's going to solve delays. If we stay on that east side, particularly if we take that Swift alignment, the streetcar and the traffic on Route 9 wouldn't actually overlap or interfere with each other at all. That said, that cost is different, again, because of winding some structures as we go through there, $33 million versus $22 million. When we look in North Kansas City, we see there's really several things along Swift that has an advantage to it. We have 11% more employees that are within a quarter mile of the Swift alignment than along Burlington. Similarly, we have 32% more population and residents today that exist along that Swift alignment than Burlington. Third one, and this goes to one of the questions kind of brought up before, on Swift, that's on city-controlled right-of-way. We're not going to have to deal with MoDOT permitting issues along that major route. MoDOT doesn't have a streetcar that runs on their right-of-way anywhere in the state, so this would be a new experience for them. And it would be an issue to work through, not to say it's not able to be done, but that's out there. The transit running time, because we're not having to turn and go over to Swift, Burlington is a little bit faster to come up and down that corridor. As far as auto, bus, and truck impacts, this is a major difference. Swift obviously has a much lower volume, so we can easily accommodate the streetcar vehicle on that route. On Burlington, we would have continued congestion, and we would see probably the need for about 30 to 50% of the traffic on Burlington would have to look for other routes to commute north-south. That could be with the new 169 and the Buck O'Neill improvements that are underway today, utilizing I-29, but you would see more gridlock of vehicular traffic along Burlington with this option. As we look at parking and, as we look at land use compatibility, a lot of the Swift corridor, particularly as you look around Armour and head up to the north, a lot of those uses are supportive of a streetcar today. On Burlington, the land uses that exist today really are auto-focused, and the introduction of a streetcar line, while it might spur redevelopment or reinvestment or changes in some of those areas, the land uses that you see there by and large aren't supportive of a streetcar facility. For parking and loading impacts, Swift, we do have a few loading docks, and really it comes down to just 2 or 3 loading docks in particular, in which we're going to have to reconfigure those. There are options to do that won't stop the business from being able to operate, but that is an impact that's more pronounced on Swift than on Burlington. And then capital costs, we've mentioned Burlington being lower, as well as on the operating and maintenance costs. With that, that brings us to what we would talk about being that locally preferred alternative that we would propose for consideration. And this does very much line up with what we've heard from the public with the Swift alignment in North Kansas City. The east side of the HOA bridge, although that there is some additional technical feasibility that has to be explored there that was beyond the scope of this project. The widening of that ramp, in particular, as you go up from 3rd Street North, it's right over the vehicle maintenance facility to make sure that we've got adequate clearance to construct that and build that. There are some other options we could look at that still maintain very similar type operations. And then south of the river, we've certainly narrowed it down to 2 viable options with the two-way 3rd and 3rd and 5th. There's some technical feasibility that has to be looked at in a couple locations along there with some detailed design that, again, was beyond this scope, but both of those are good options to move forward with. Now we get about financing, and maybe these slides are a bit out of order. We should have hit that after the cost. A couple of things to keep in mind with financing of a project this way is that there are a lot of different sources of revenue, not just local, that are out there. There is the national competitive grants that are available. Again, often somewhere around that 50% of the cost is a target you might shoot for to get that funding. You can also have federal funds that are regionally suballocated through the Mid-America Regional Council. Not as large of a portion, typically, but there is some funding out there as well. There's also the possibility of getting dedicated funds from the state of Missouri, as well as bridge and highway funds as we look to make modifications to the HOA bridge. And then there are local sources. There are transportation development districts that can be looked at. That's what's used in Kansas City, Missouri today, where you can self-tax an additional property tax or sales tax in those areas, and we'll get to some of those revenue projections in a second. Or you can consider a larger boundary. TDDs do not necessarily have to be contained within a city boundary in the state of Missouri, so it could be looking at different partnerships to expand that and maybe look at more of a regional impact going forward. And then we've got new taxes that are available out there as well, including dedicated transit taxes, as well as on both a local level as well as a regional level, which are enabled and allowed by statute in Missouri.
Councilmember Saber.
With the competitive nature across the country for federal dollars in particular, And are we seeing a competitive project problem in Kansas City, Missouri metropolitan area in terms of east-west versus coming to North Kansas City or going elsewhere?
So maybe best if I step back for a second. I would say, having worked in this industry and in this area for 25 years, a little more than that now, what we actually have is a unique situation in Kansas City is that, despite what you might hear, our congressional representatives on both sides of the aisle, on both sides of the state line, historically work very well together to try to position and get funding. It is not unusual at all to see representatives and even governors from the two states supporting applications in other states. So I would say that there's not a us versus them mentality for a lot of that we've historically seen in this area. We tried, I think as regions, people try to make sure they're putting the best projects forward for those competitive grants, but they come up every year. There's another opportunity out there. So I don't know if that answers your question exactly, but I would say that I think we're in fairly good standing in that regard.
Councilmember Smith.
It's maybe too new already, but the climate bill, so-called, is there anything in that at this point that we're aware of? Because this would obviously be a green initiative. Is
Yeah.
anything?
I have not gone through all of that yet. I think one of the elements of infrastructure that was talked about funding that was more of reconnecting neighborhoods, and it would probably be more applicable to a project like the lowering of Route 9 in South Kansas City that's been talked about to eliminate that grade crossing, or that grade separation there. I don't believe, and I'll defer yet if we've seen any other in that bill. Have you had a chance, Tom, to look at that, or Lauren?
Yeah, I think there is an expansion.
I'm just going to, can you step up to the mic so people at home can hear you too?
Tom Guerin, Executive Director of the Kansas City Streetcar Authority. There is a host of programs from green energies. You think about this as electric vehicles as an option to actually expansion of some of the transit formula programs. So not just the climate bill, but the infrastructure bill. We've seen an influx of an expansion of the existing programs with the same number of projects in the queue when those programs were much larger. So there's more opportunity than ever. It's one of the reasons why, getting in line, doing the due diligence is important. And again, whether it's not this bill or the next bill, the trajectory has been solid, and the programs and the areas of eligibility have grown significantly over just the last few years.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tom.
Oh, there we go. Councilmember Tull. I was waiting on you.
I have a couple questions. The first one you probably won't be able to answer. It's just something I've been wondering about. I'm in favor of the Swift line, but looking at Burlington, it sounds like the verbiage coming from MoDOT is that it wouldn't look very much like a thoroughfare anymore, but it's the Missouri Department of Transportation. So I'm wondering why transportation in this sense only means cars if we're not changing the speed limit of those vehicles and we're maintaining 4 lanes. It's just a curiosity, and then I'll move on to my next question.
So I think the best thing to say is it is change. They haven't really dealt with that situation today. And if it were to progress along that Burlington, we'd have to have more conversations with MoDOT on how and by what means they would accommodate that.
Okay. And I seem to remember in our last discussions that there are some cost savings to some of these more expensive choices. For example, I think you said on the west side, being that there's a buffer before that rail, that there would be a cost savings in maintenance, which would be ongoing annual costs. Is that true?
If I can remember that you're talking about on the bridge itself?
On the bridge itself.
So the options that we've come up with allow probably an easier inspection if it were to be on the east side, that approach that was recommended by a lot of folks here, or a lot of the public that they preferred, and that the MoDOT could still use their what are called snooper trucks, which are the bucket trucks that actually go up underneath the bridge to take a look at inspection. I wouldn't say it would be a monumental cost savings on that. The option with the west side There are two different options you could look at. One, during that inspection period, you could, and some communities do this, they actually shut down the streetcar during those inspections. The other option, it's a type of bridge that doesn't have to have close visual inspection. We've seen more and more agencies begin to use drone technology to do the inspection in those situations. It's not something MoDOT does a lot of, so it's a different change there.
And then my final question is a clarification, point of clarification. Where we are right now is the feasibility study, correct? Which is what we need with the community outreach, the piece that we need to go after funding, correct?
So so we'll talk on those next steps. There's some steps before you're ready to apply for the major grant yet.
Okay.
This kind of answers that question of what is that locally preferred option that we want to go through, and we'll get on that here in a moment of what those next steps are.
Okay, thank you.
All right. We did actually go out and take a look at some estimates for what could be bonded today in North Kansas City with two assumptions. One is looking at a property tax through a transportation development district that would mirror what is in Kansas City, Missouri. And we looked at two different ranges here on both Burlington and Swift. One was taking a look at all the property along those corridors, and the other is we pulled out the industrial developments. An argument could be made and has been brought up to some is that some of these warehousing uses really won't see a benefit out of a streetcar. So if they operated that business, perhaps we shouldn't be having them an additional property tax. What we found on that is those property taxes, if we were to bond that out over a number of years, wouldn't necessarily generate a lot of money on the property tax side. Anywhere from on the low end of about $4.7 million to upwards about $7 million in total bonding capacity, not annual revenue, total bonding capacity there. If we look instead at the sales tax, now this sales tax is actually applied throughout North Kansas City. So it's North Kansas City as a whole. It would generate about $60 million in bonding capacity moving forward. One thing when we talk about this project, being in that neighborhood of $200 million, only about 40% of the capital cost, or approximately 40% of the total capital cost, not including the vehicles or the maintenance facility, are actually on facilities outside of North Kansas City, the MoDOT bridge and the improvements in Kansas City, Missouri, which goes to that discussion of the need to think about a broader picture and a broader funding and more cooperation between agencies to really look at this funding capability. So with that really comes down to those next steps, which was just asked about. First of all, we are looking for your input on that locally preferred alternative so that we can finalize our report and bring this current phase of the project to a close. Next, we need to actually secure funding to advance some engineering and conduct some environmental studies. This estimate for these projects is somewhere around $750,000. We would be able to advance at that time some of the station locations and the detailed operations, looking at some of the additional design that's needed to understand some critical issues south of the river. Go into some additional design to ensure how we could widen the bridge and make sure that was feasible, and then look at that next stage of the environmental studies that are needed to position you. With those items done, you would then be in a position, if you can put together some regional funding to get about a 50% match, that you could submit for those federal grants. So with that, we're open for discussions, conversations.
All right, council input on locally preferred alternatives. Councilmember Smith.
I go with the majority on the strongly preferring the SWIFT alignment. Just from the walk shed alone, you see how much more use it would likely get. I do keep coming back to, I would love it to be a dedicated lane. That way you can move on a schedule. You can dependably, the biggest problem people tell me about with buses right now is like, you get there and it's a window of time where they might show up, and it's just not a reliable form of transit. So I would love to see, and I know we had the rendering, I know Swift is a pretty wide street, it may be challenging to get a fully dedicated lane, but if we are going to do that, I would push to pursue something along those lines. The other thing on the funding report, not really a big fan of putting the property tax increase on, because people are going to have different feelings, different thoughts, and they can't avoid paying property tax if they live in the area. But with the sales tax, people can choose where they spend their money. It's a consumption-based tax, and it has a much larger bonding impact. So,
Councilmember, that actually brings up one point, pardon me, Mayor, is that North Kansas City, I think you all know, has a relatively low sales tax today. The sales tax we're talking about would put you just on par with your closest neighbors, many of which would actually be still well above that property tax, or that sales tax rate.
Councilmember Saber.
Do you have any estimates on actual ridership potential for this line and what the cost would be per rider?
So we have begun some preliminary looks at those riderships. The unique nature of North Kansas City, the models that were out there need to be adjusted. That would be part of that next step, would be to fine-tune those projections. So,
Any kind of guesstimate at this point?
no, I'm afraid not, no.
Councilmember Graves.
So I realize that North Kansas City strongly favors the Swift over Burlington alignment. Initially, when I was thinking about the streetcar, I actually really was excited about Burlington for the simple fact that you mentioned redevelopment. I think that people are very short-sighted sometimes when they look at what's currently on Swift versus if there was a streetcar down Burlington, what potential that could have for decades to come. We could redevelop the Burlington area instead of just looking at, what's there now. Think about what could be there in the future. But that's a huge buzzkill when you mention that the lanes of traffic would be reduced from 3 lanes to 2. So that was like dumping a cold bucket of water on my head when you mentioned that, because we already have traffic issues down here. Something else that you've kind of mentioned, but I don't see any solutions as far as parking. I'm not sure if you guys are aware of the fact that we have intense parking situations down here. I can vouch for everyone up here on the council that that's one of the most common complaints that we deal with. And so just theoretically speaking, if we ran the line down Burlington, I think that there would be more potential for adding parking area. And then before I forget, something else, big picture, is in the future, decades from now, when my kids are, adult my age, if the streetcar wants to expand further north, then I think that Burlington would actually make more sense in that regard. You're saying that currently, people are looking at using this not as a commuter line, but just to go, I'm going to go out to eat, I'm going to go shopping. But if we did want to make this a commuter line and have people actually going downtown and Northland back and forth to go to work, things of that nature, Burlington would actually make more sense. And if you really want to go big picture, like if you're talking about going up to the airport, things like that, then just running a line down Swift would not make as much sense as running it down Burlington and up. So, yeah, I just threw a lot at you.
If I might respond, great comments and some of the things brought up in the past. One thing to keep in mind is that Swift, and we pulled this map up here, the laser probably doesn't work on the TV. Swift actually aligns very closely with North Oak Trafficway. The second component on that, extending up to the airport, it's a long ways to go. It would probably be a different technology than the streetcar that would get you to the airport. It doesn't quite have the speeds that you normally see for that. And your comments on Burlington about redevelopment, part of that also, as we sit down with those focus groups, is there people are making some very long-term investments today, particularly on the west side of Burlington. That didn't see that as really something that would be changing anytime soon. So. Lastly, you brought up parking. Bear in mind, one of the things with transit is it can actually reduce that demand for parking, as it's providing different people different options who might be driving from Kansas City today to come up to the different restaurants, the different entertainment venues in North Kansas City. They'll be taking that line at that point instead of driving up to come and visit those.
Okay, on that note, I would politely disagree with you in that regard, because I'm talking about parking coming not from people coming south to Northtown. I'm talking about people that, I meet it here at Dag Park that come from Gladstone, Parkville, Liberty. What they're gonna do is they're gonna drive down here, park their car, get on the streetcar to go to the city market or to go to Union Station. And so we're gonna end up being a parking lot, essentially, for everything. If this is the most northern point of the streetcar, then everything north of here, they're gonna come here, park, get on the streetcar to go south. And then also, I've heard a rumor, you might clarify, I don't know that this is true or not. How fast does a streetcar go? I've been told that they have, that downtown they go a slow speed, but they can actually go, what? How fast are they?
I was gonna say about 45 miles an hour.
Okay.
Is probably what you will see. The manufacturers might say 50, but realistically.
'Cause I've always thought that you would have to have more of like a multimodal, like I lived in Boston for a period in my life, and if you wanted to go to the airport, for example, you would take like the green line, which is basically like our streetcar, and then you would have to transfer to a higher speed train, or in some cases a bus. You would take like the streetcar, get off, jump on a bus, and then, so you wouldn't actually take the streetcar all the way up there. But if you were running more of a commuter line like that, then you would need substantial amounts of parking available on the line near these stops or else it's just going to overflood the system. And we already have a parking shortage. So it's just something to keep in mind. I'm not trying to be Debbie Downer.
Nope, and all good points. We've heard that from enough residents and businesses as well. And that's where we look to, there'd be steps that would have to be taken to manage some parking and looking at how we best accommodate this going forward. And some of those options could be the consideration of dedicated parking lots for the uses, things like that. So a lot of communities have those. We have them in some areas here in Kansas City for our regional buses. All those options would need to be fleshed out over time as well.
We may even be inadvertently building that parking lot now at 16th and Clay. Saw your hand. Okay. This side's been quiet tonight. Anything over here? Okay. On preferred, Lisa, I did not see yours. Go ahead, Councilmember Toll.
I know he wanted our opinions, so I was just going to speak up and say I also agree with all the surveys as far as coming across the bridge on the east side, Swift line. I know some of the costs up front, the capital costs are higher, but I think it'll run more smoothly and be less disruptive to other traffic and more accessible to our residents.
No, generally I would agree. I'm not shocked by these preferences, these alignments. Out and about in the community is generally what you heard and kind of solve some of the problems, at least I've heard. Not all of them, but some of them from the business community over the flow of goods and would that be passenger traffic. I see you. I'm getting there.
Okay.
I'm getting there. I saw you there. Lost my flow. Very persistent hand there. Councilmember Saper, go ahead.
You mentioned you don't have a sense of what the ridership would be or the potential cost per rider. Okay, at this stage.
Right.
What is it for the extension to line in Kansas City from Union Station to near UMKC?
You're asking about the ridership projections?
Ridership and cost per rider.
I'm going to defer on this one. I think the new.
I want to say, so the Main Street South extension is
Yeah.
a $352 million capital project.
Correct.
I want to say, I'm trying to remember, do you remember the ridership number? So it's about 7,000 trips a day on the extension, not including the main line existing. So you can do the calculus there, daily, not annual.
When you say trips, does that count person going to and from as
That would be two trips, just like a car, just like an average.
So not 7,000 users,
people.
but closer to maybe 3,000.
Yes, count trips, because you might have an individual take 3 or 4 trips.
That's
If they're
right.
chaining chips and doing things
So it
just
could-
like you might in an automobile.
Could be as low as 2,500
Yeah, so it's,
or 300.
so our trips downtown, for example, right now on the starter line, we average approximately 5,500 trips a day. Some days we'll have 4,000, some days we'll have 15,000 or 18,000 trips, depending on what's going on downtown. Yeah.
So there you're getting at least maybe 2,500 people a day using it. Roughly. Okay, I just wonder what, gives us a benchmark for here.
Well, there you go. Then I'll just shorten all my comments there and say I'll support the preferred alignments on all 3. There you go. There we go. With that, further council member, what else you got? Are you done?
We're
That is
done.
the end of presentation.
Yes, yes, sir.
I didn't mean that to be so direct, but next steps. There we go. Now I have some assistance
There we
here.
go.
So with that, you'll be able to put together your final report, and then we'll have further discussions kind of on the rest of the phases outside of here. Correct. All right, with that, last chance. I appreciate the work, and thank you for the presentation this evening.
All right, thank you
We'll
very
be in
much.
touch. Thank you. All right. Oh, it's an ordinance. That's you.
Item 13, amended and restated North Kansas City Destination Developers Master Development Agreement.
I have listed Steve Sparks. Please.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the City Council. I'm Steve Sparks with the law firm of Brian Cave, Leighton Paisner in Kansas City, Missouri. I've been working on some aspect of the One North project since 2007, I believe. It shows you how long it takes to put one of these together. And in 2016, the city selected a master developer for the project after all the sites were cleared and entered into a development agreement with North Kansas City Destination Developers. The principal party in that company is Rick Warner, who's here tonight, along with his lawyers. Since 2016, we have amended that development agreement 4 times, and we have actually completed a number of the tasks that were originally set out in the original development agreement. For example, there was a whole provision of that development agreement that provided for the construction of what was then called the Spine Road, which is now Diamond Parkway, which is complete. The developer has completed a number of projects with individual component developers in the development site, the Aloft and Element hotels, the backyard apartments, the medical office building, the old Chicago, the Starbucks, and so forth. We've been talking most recently about including in the development agreement an obligation and a covenant to build a grocery store by the developer or a new component developer in One North. It seemed appropriate to amend and restate the old 2016 agreement to bring it up to date, get rid of old provisions, and include new provisions specifically in part relating to the grocery store. So the agreement before you tonight that's discussed in the ordinance creates an obligation on the master developer to produce a grocery store at One North, 25,000 square foot minimum size grocery store. We included in this agreement, and the developer has agreed to a number of milestone provisions related to the grocery. Probably the most important is to be open for business no later than 12/31/2023. The developer has stated on a number of occasions that in order to entice a grocery operator to operate at One North and to build a grocery, there need to be additional apartments. So the development agreement contemplates that a development for apartments, 275-unit apartment building by Millhouse Apartments out of Indianapolis, would be part and parcel of the developer's obligation to produce a grocery. There's, in fact, an item on the agenda later tonight that you might consider if you approve the amended and restated development agreement. Chief among the provisions relating to Millhouse is that if the city closes with the developer, the master developer, on the Millhouse site, $2.7 million of money from the proceeds of that sale will be deposited in an escrow with the city to be used exclusively for the grocery. I'm happy, I know this is a big document, a number of changes from the last time we considered this. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have about particulars in the agreement. We also have here tonight Matt Webster, who's the city's financial advisor, and he's been involved in both the negotiation of the agreement and in the numbers side of things. Happy to answer any questions you might have.
All right. Thank you. Appreciate the work you put into this, trying to make sure that we actually formalize having this grocery store completed on this site. Was that a comment there, Councilmember Smith?
I'll just go for a first reading.
Second.
There we go. All in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
Opposed? No.
An ordinance approving amended and restated master development agreement between the City of North Kansas City, Missouri and North Kansas City Destination Developers, LLC, regarding One North, formerly known as the Armour Road redevelopment area.
I move that bill number 7700 be placed on second and final reading and pass as ordinance number 9497.
Second.
All right. Any further council member comments? Seeing none, call the roll, please.
Councilmember Clark.
Yes.
Councilmember Palumbi.
Yes.
Councilmember Graves.
Yes.
Councilmember Saper.
Yes.
Councilmember Tall.
Yes.
Councilmember Smith.
Yes.
Councilmember Fitzgerald.
Yes.
Councilmember Roberts.
Yes.
An ordinance approving amended and restated master development agreement between the City of North Kansas City, Missouri and North Kansas City Destination Developers, LLC, regarding One North, formerly known as the Armour Road redevelopment area.
And with that, number 14 is
Thank you.
off. 14's off the agenda now. Are we skipping 14? On to 15.
Item 15, consideration of Chapter 100 revenue bonds for Millhouse Apartments.
All right, Kim.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. As Mr. Sparks alluded to, this item deals with the Chapter 100 bonds for the Millhouse apartment. The entire One North development does have a Chapter 100 overlay, which is kind of the overarching document that this right here is a subcomponent of. What this particular item would do was allow sales tax exemption for Millhouse for their construction of their apartments. The city does have no liability in this particular one, as the agreement indemnifies the city, and I am happy to answer any questions, or Matt Webster is also available for questions of any financial nature you may have.
First reading?
Second.
All in favor, please say yes.
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 Opposed? No. Was there more to, okay, motion carries. Let's close that out. Was there something else you had there?
An ordinance
No, okay.
authorizing the City of North Kansas City, Missouri to issue its taxable industrial development revenue bonds and authorizing and approving documents and certain actions in connection therewithin.
I move that bill number 7701 be placed on second and final reading and pass as ordinance number 9498.
Second.
Any council member comments? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Clark.
Yes.
Councilmember Palumbi.
Yes.
Councilmember Graves.
Yes.
Councilmember Saper.
Yes.
Councilmember Tall.
Yes.
Councilmember Smith.
Yes.
Councilmember Fitzgerald.
Yes.
Councilmember Roberts.
Yes.
An ordinance authorizing the City of North Kansas City, Missouri to issue its taxable industrial development revenue bonds and authorizing and approving documents and certain actions in connection therewithin.
All right, number 16, North Kansas City Business Council presentation. Mr. Groves, or whoever you want to present.
I'm Rich Groves, the Executive Director of the North Kansas City Business Council. Thank you for the opportunity for us to present to you tonight. I think you've seen our written report, and we'll take a brief time for highlighting some of those items and a few other points we'd like to make. And I'm pleased to be able to introduce three members of our Executive Committee and Board. Jack Fry is our Chairman, Jason Crowley is our President, and Kathy Warman is our Treasurer, and they're going to make the presentation.
Good evening.
Thank you once again for the opportunity for us to come present to you. We're all running around. You guys really do a lot of great work in the community with a lot of the constituents that you have that live here. I think in general, we have been trying to do a better job of working with the city and communicating, and that's something we want to work on. And that's why we really push and like this program that we have with you guys to allow us to work together in order to support the business community, as it is an integral part of North Kansas City. I'm fortunate to have been a long-term, I guess, person running around North Kansas City, going to high school and everything. My father was a past president of the Business Council. So the important thing about that's been really interesting to me is to see the change in dynamic in the relationship between the city, the Business Council, and the constituents over the last 25 years. And especially after this program started to get more formalized, it forced us to really talk and be accountable to each other. And that's very important, because if we operate separately, if we don't communicate, if we don't find ways to align our goals, then it becomes difficult for us to support each other, and it can become a little bit of a contentious relationship. I'd say especially over the last 5 to 10 years, we've really formed a really strong bond with the city of North Kansas City, everybody working with it. We've had little issues and things like that, but those are good things. That means we're communicating. That means we have an opportunity to work through things so that the actions of the Business Council and the actions of the City Council itself ultimately benefit both parties. And I'm excited to be here and be a part of that. In general, I'll go to the next slide. Just kind of an overarching what we are. We're a 501c6 nonprofit corporation. We were established in 1994. We're similar to a chamber of commerce. We operate a little bit differently. We're a little more intimate in that we really focus on the businesses in North Kansas City and supporting them. We're not all about bringing everybody in the world in here. We're finding ways to get people to think North Kansas City first, and that's our ultimate goal and mission, so that we can bring business into North Kansas City, which ultimately supports a lot of the projects that you guys like to do. It also beautifies the city, makes it a better community for everyone to live in. We have an economic development, workforce development focus, and Kathy will talk a little bit more about some of the things we do. 240 member businesses currently support us. There are about 1,000 businesses in North Kansas City, but part of what we do with you, of course, is to communicate to all 1,000 businesses. We have 2 paid employees, an executive director, Rich, and a member services and events coordinator, who is Paula, and they're the only 2 paid members. Everyone else that works with the Business Council, except maybe on a contract basis for goods or items, the board and everything, we're all volunteer, and we volunteer our time and a lot of times some of our money in order to make sure that the Business Council goes, because it's important to us. The board of directors and the executive committee run it. We can go to the next slide here. Briefly, the executive committee, when 3 of us are here, while it's awesome to have an organization like the Business Council and a structure like the city to work with, if we don't have solid businesses backing us, then we have no integrity, and we really don't have anything to bring you. Fortunately, we've been real fortunate to have a lot of very good member businesses from all classifications be a part of the Business Council, which has made us a more robust and stronger organization. Let me hit the next one. And one other thing about our makeup that I think is really important that I don't know that we've really pointed out in the past is one of the parts of our bylaws is that we are split out into different segments. So we put forth a strong effort to bring in different types of businesses so that we get a pretty good cross-section of what's going on in there. That's changed the way we work. We avoid taking stances on issues because we have a strong diversity of businesses, and that doesn't necessarily benefit everybody. But what we've done is really focused on putting those businesses in a position where they can communicate their needs to you. And we do it through supporting them, informing them, and connecting them with Kathy, who's going to talk about next.
Good evening. My name is Kathy Warman. I'm an architect and the owner of K. Warman Architecture. It's a pleasure to be here tonight. We appreciate your time. What the Business Council does, it's important that I guess everybody understands what it is we do. And I will say, and Jack alluded to this, I too am a long-time North Kansas City person. I'm a North Kansas City High School graduate. My business has been here for over 30 years, and it was when I came in contact with the Business Council for the first time that I realized the value that they provide to businesses. And one of the things that they do, and you might show the next slide, is we really attempt to support the businesses. We support them by offering opportunities for networking, offering opportunities for business promotion, and we try to be attentive and responsive to issues or things where businesses in the city might be feeling that they have problems. We inform. It's very important for our businesses to be informed about what's going on, not only with the city, but with other businesses and other surrounding metropolitan areas. That information is provided in a number of ways. We have an e-newsletter that's provided that for all of our members as a recap from each city council meeting. Rich attends those meetings and provides a great report to the businesses on what you guys are doing, and that's a wonderful way to connect for the businesses. We provide other newsletters and emails to provide information to the businesses about things that are going on in the community or urgent issues or things that need attention. We have a website that is continuously updated, so our members have that as a resource. We provide a quarterly printed newsletter for those who don't regularly use the internet or get on the website. We provide an annual business directory listing all the North Kansas City businesses, and I find that I actually use that all the time. I pull out my directory because I want to think North Kansas City first, and if I need printing or something for my business, I'm going to look for a North Kansas City business to help me with that, and the directory is a very good resource. And then we have a monthly luncheon where everyone can come, and there's informative and interesting programs that are always entertaining, and it's a good lunch as well. And lastly, we connect, respond to business concerns by identifying and connecting with people that might be able to help them. We have a number of different committees, and Jack alluded to the different types of businesses that we attempt to connect with. Again, it's not just focused on service businesses or professional services. We try to reach all the businesses, manufacturing, financial, retail, restaurant, we count all of those types of businesses as members. We have a weekly Northland Coffee Connect, Wednesdays at iWorks. The business directory is available online as well. And the Business Council promotes a lot of other types of community outreach. We are very involved with Northland CAPS, the Clay County EDC. Many of the business members in the Business Council work closely with the North Kansas City School District and the career pathways and the workforce development programs and some of the new programs that the school district is trying to kick off and really need the help and the connection with the business community to help provide that type of experience. Many of us host teacher externships where we have teachers come to our businesses and learn all about what it is we do so they can take that back to the classroom and provide a little bit better, bit of information about, how the business world really works. So the Business Council is very proud to serve the North Kansas City businesses, and there are over 900 businesses here in North Kansas City that provide the tax revenue that is needed to do all the wonderful things that we know the city is doing, and we're always very, very, very grateful for your support. And I think that with that, we'll let.
We get to skip forward to, there's a slide that has a table of businesses and their primary needs or business types. Keep going, I think one more. There we go. Well, thank you all. My name's Jason Crowley. I'm currently the president of the Business Council, and I want to bring forward a little bit of the information about what our businesses are about. So there, as you see here, there are 939 businesses that we know of in North Kansas City. That is an ever-changing number, and I have rarely seen it go down. So as the population here grows, it seems that the business community also grows. There are, of course, some very large businesses that everybody knows about, but there are a whole lot of very small businesses that still employ people, still bring in tax revenue, and are very important to the city as a whole. They also employ a lot of the people that are right here in North Kansas City, and they bring, as you all know, a huge population of daytime folks into town that don't actually sleep here, but spend a lot of time here and spend their money here. We divide those up into a list of, you've got professional services businesses. There's quite a bit of industry still in North Kansas City, and will continue to be. Destination attractions are that's what we see all the time. That, you know, theaters and bars and restaurants and all of those things, but there's so much more going on here. And a lot of people rarely see the whole Paseo Industrial District because it's on the other side of the highway and there's nothing residential over there, but there's a whole lot of business happening there. And so different businesses have different needs. And so you see a lot in this table of, you know, wanting parking and awareness. The industrial side, the PID folks are very interested in infrastructure. Do I have good, adequate power and streets and rail access? And you've heard before, can I get a truck down that street and turn the corner? And then we've got a lot of health and wellness here in town who is interested in parking, access, awareness of what they're doing here. And you can move to the next slide. Sources of funding. So we're, for the most part, a member-supported organization. Our membership dues are right about half of what we get every year. And then we host a number of events, golf tournaments, things like that to raise funds, our monthly luncheons. That provides another quarter of what we're doing. We have been blessed to have support from the city. That's another 20% of our annual funding. And then we have some other miscellaneous things that we get in that makes up the last 5% there. We'll go to the next slide. All right, so I hope you guys have had time to look at this. We were allocated for the 2022 year $30,000. As in years past, we have overspent that by a little bit, and we absorbed that. And this year it is to the tune of about $35,163 of $30,000. So we're a little bit, about $5,000 over that we generally run. These are staffing, web-oriented things, website and social media. You can go through that list. I won't list off every single thing. But that's what we do, and these are things that are focused on the business community at large, not just members. So about a quarter of the businesses that are in North Kansas City are members. The other 3/4, we still provide services for them as well. And that's where this funding comes in, to make sure that we are reaching out to everybody and serving as a conduit, especially for communication between you, the city council, city staff, regulatory things that need to be dealt with, all of those things, so that we provide a resource to get that information, to get businesses to the city, and then also to get what's going on right here today out to the business community. And then the final slide, I get to ask for money. We would like to, if the council is willing, to increase to cover the $5,000 that we've been covering for the last few years, to $35,000 from the funding in prior years of $30,000. And with that, I will let you all choose what to do. I want to say thank you for allowing us to be here to report to you what we're doing. Please ask me any questions. I'm open for that right now.
Thank you. Questions? Go ahead, Councilmember Smith.
Thank you for the presentation. Thanks for all you do. 35,000 sounds fine to me.
Further Councilmember comments? I was going to ask a couple questions. So one, I know previously we'd kind of asked, at least maybe I had asked, about possibly having representation of this from the city on the board of directors. Have we had any further
So
discussion?
I think we addressed that a year ago, but let me tell you again, what I know is that your council, this council over here, Tom Barzee, and correct me if I'm wrong, says that shouldn't happen. What I do want to say is
he's
that,
replaceable. No, I'm just kidding.
What I do want to say is that you're always welcome to address the business council.
Okay.
While you may not be able to formally hold leadership positions, you're invited to any board meeting. Get a hold of Rich, get a hold of me, get a hold of Jack. Any one of us will get you in front of the board, address what you have. We certainly want input from city council and city staff for that matter.
I just could, yeah, sorry, I just couldn't remember if we had any further conversations, but yeah, I'll have fun. We'll further discuss this. I saw a hand over here. Councilmember Graves.
Yeah, along the same train of thought, I would encourage people on the council. There's some of us that do attend a lot of business council events, and I have a great admiration and appreciation for the business council. And if you haven't attended these events, you can actually sign up when they have a luncheon, for example. You can email Crystal, and she'll sign you up, and you can go have lunch. These guys are all ears. They're very receptive, and it's really a great time just to meet local business owners. And I'm in favor, as is Councilmember Smith, of their funding, $35,000. And then also, just coincidentally, today I was at the barber shop with my boys getting they're getting back to school haircuts, and I was flipping through the business directory, which I hadn't done before, and I would encourage anybody here locally pick one of those up. Where are those available? Are they? You have to be a member to have that, or can you pick them up at City Hall? Yep. So you can come down here and pick them up at City Hall for people listening at home.
I think
and if you need
link them on the
something
website.
like, because there's an amazing number of businesses here.
The
that-
directory is on our website? I'm sorry.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if you need to have a will drawn up, if you need an accountant, if you need anything you need, we have it right here in North Kansas City. So thank you all.
So to address the question of availability, there's certainly some of those directories right here. The Business Council office has them. A lot of businesses with some public-facing space, we will certainly offer them to be on a table or whatever is available there. So I can't tell you which ones those are right now, but I know they're there.
Thank you. So here we go. I'm going to ask for a motion to go ahead and formalize an increase here from an increase of 5,000 to 35,000.
Move to increase the business council funding from 30,000 to 35.
Oh.
Nope. Yeah.
You have to have a contract brought back to you, folks.
Okay, this motion is to direct staff to bring back a contract with an increase of to $35,000.
It's against the Constitution to make donations to any private organization.
Well, the assumption is we're going to use the same
So
services last year.
they have to be,
Yeah.
they have to have a contract for services to render to the city.
So would you just like a thumbs up from us?
Yeah, so we're directing.
We can.
You're directing me to put $35,000.
Put it in the contract.
I'm
But
sure-
I wanted you to know that's what needs to get done at this
Okay, well,
stage.
there is a more clear motion if everyone got that from Mr. Barcy there.
Yeah.
There.
So do we?
Was
are
there a
we
second there?
Are we doing a motion? Or are we just telling you to do it?
Well,
bring
let's
it
just
back?
motion it out for clarity so we don't have questions later down
Second.
the road here. Yeah.
Second, but bring it back, right?
There we go.
Just bring back
There
the
we go.
contract
All in favor,
reflecting
please say yes.
35,000.
Yes.
Yes.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. See, now there's peace of mind. See, I could see it in Kim. There's a
Thank you
motion.
very much. Thank you all.
Thank you. Have a good evening. Thank you. We don't like questions over votes later, so now there's votes. Next item is the Armor Road Complete Streets Construction Discussion. Anthony.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. At the last council meeting, staff brought forward a contract for construction of Armor Road Phase 2 with Gunter Construction. The contract was approved, and staff has begun engaging the contractor to keep the project moving forward. But during discussion, there was some questions regarding a mid-block crosswalk at Macon and Armor, and just basically the design challenges there and what that could mean, and if there are other alternatives. So tonight we have Jay Aber with WSP Engineers to be able to answer any questions regarding that design. And
I will put Jay straight to work here. Can you tell me what are the benefits of adding a mid-block crossing at Macon?
Well, I'm glad you asked, Mr. Mayor. And for the record, I shall say that Mr. Barzee is highly unreplaceable, so.
He always scores well on performance reviews. Don't worry.
He's not even listening now, is he? The mid-block.
He's probably mad at me. Okay. The mid-block crossing, please.
Yes, the mid-block crossing. So the mid-block crossing at Macon is something that has been contemplated in the plan on Armor Road since the original planning study a few years ago. It was a place that we heard from the public that a lot of people wanted to cross the road. It seems like every single time I go by there, including driving here tonight to the meeting, I see someone walking across the road there, so it's clearly somewhere that a lot of people are trying to cross, and as I'm sure a lot of you have seen, the way to cross is to pray and run as fast as you can. So The location there was primarily for that, to make it easier and safer for pedestrians to cross the road. The mid-block crossings also provide a traffic calming benefit, slowing cars down, gives you kind of that gateway effect. That's really sort of what we're going for west of Lynn as well, with the crossing and the islands there, to help people understand as they're coming there that they're entering a different kind of context, a different area, that they should pay attention, they should slow down. And similar, although less dramatic, at Macon, you are coming off the highway or coming from 210 from the east on a 6-lane road, the higher speed limit. The mid-block crossing gives you some of those context clues that this is a different area, a different type of area, and it's somewhere you might encounter pedestrians and should probably think about paying attention and slowing down a little bit. And what we have in the plans right now also includes the rapid rectangular flashing beacons, the RRFB, which is a yellow warning sign, pedestrian warning sign that has rapid rectangular flashing beacons on it that flash very rapidly when a pedestrian hits the button. They are pointed to one direction of traffic, so they would be actuated for one direction and then crossing the road. Those aren't really a treatment that work well without a pedestrian refuge island on a road like this. Drivers, with the signs being so far apart, oftentimes don't yield, are kind of confused. So we put the refuge island with RFBs in the current design.
There we go. That was probably the softball question. Now we'll hit you hard here. Councilmember Graves.
I mean, the obvious question is, why are people not crossing at, is it Lynn, like where Taze is, and Quick Trip? Like, why are these, like, so we're gonna, like you just mentioned, like we're gonna slow traffic, calm traffic, you call it, but you're slowing traffic on Armour so that people can cross the street in a place where they shouldn't be crossing the street. Like, is there a way to get people to use crossings where there's already a stoplight and just stop running across Armour Road? I feel like we're slowing traffic for people that are doing something that they shouldn't be doing. It's not safe, and I don't see a reason that we should. Armour Road is already like an obstacle course. I feel like I'm like playing Mario Kart driving down Armour at this point, and we're going to add more islands so that people can cross the street in obscure areas where, what is it? I mean, 100 feet away, there's a stoplight you could walk down to. It's mind-boggling to me.
All right, Councilmember Smith.
So
was there a specific question in there?
Is there a way?
Sorry, I might have missed that.
Is there a way to entice people? Is it a design flaw that we have? Why are people not crossing at the stoplight? Why are they running like Frogger across the street? It just doesn't make sense. It's illogical.
Yeah, it's a good question. And as you look down Armour Road from Burlington to the east, we have a pedestrian crossing every 200 or 300 feet. Once you get east of Lynn, there's not another safe and controlled crossing until Ozark. And I think, if I remember right, it's about 900 feet in between those, so almost a quarter mile. And pedestrians, for better or worse, will cross where they cross. And this seems to be a location where a lot of people are crossing because of the businesses there, because of the streets. And it's incredibly challenging, if not impossible, to keep a pedestrian from actually crossing at a location. You could put up an actual physical wall or a fence, something like that. But short of that, pedestrians tend to cross where they are, where it's convenient, where they're trying to go. So typically the best practice is to find those places where people want to cross and provide those safe crossings for them.
About the path of least resistance from the Holiday Inn to Taco Bell.
Yes. Or
I don't know where, because you do see a lot of people coming over from Holiday Inn. That is where I see a lot of people originally coming the other way.
Or America into Wendy's. Either way. So I was on the train wreck of the last discussion. Sorry, everybody, for getting us here. My concern is the impact on the turns. So egress coming out of the Wendy's drive-through area. So people come around, there's an exit of Wendy's. If they're turning to go to the highway, they're going to run right into that island, I believe. Or have to do a weird like wiggle around it to make a left turn. Alternatively, turning left into Volcano, Teppanyaki, the buffet. The island is pretty much blocking that turn. So my concern would be people approaching that like they normally have, and then, or just being new to the area, try to come in, see an island, jump back into traffic. is there a way around that, or is it just going to be a learning process for drivers?
So to the first point about drivers exiting, the island does not block the actual driveways. So to make a left turn out, you wouldn't need to go around the island. You could take a pretty straight path back onto the road to make a left turn out from the businesses there. To your second point of making a left turn in, that would, because of the location of it, and there's really, there's not a great spot for this island because of all the driveways down there, and this is probably the best location that we could find that didn't fully block a driveway, and it was also conveniently about halfway between the signals. But certainly making a left turn in, you lose that space on that two-way left turn lane there. So most likely, most people making a left turn in would yield in the through lane to make that left turn. So cars would have to go around them. I think you may be, if you're kind of tricky with your car, you may be able to weave yourself into the two-way left turn lane just past the island and still make the left turn in. But it's highly likely a lot of those cars making a left turn in would yield in that through lane. So the cars driving through would need to wait behind them or go around them.
Do we have the rendering handy to, like, 'cause it's hard to.
Here we go.
Nada?
You don't just carry it around in your pocket?
I could sketch it out if you'd like.
Yeah, I can see it in my head, but like I think I've got the island position slightly off.
When I was going to say, it's got to be on one of those previous agendas there. Let's play Do You Know Your Agenda?
It was last
Do you know your... Wow. Now there's like, I put these together. It's this one. Go.
It's buried pretty deep in this document too, so have fun finding it. Yeah. 200 pages of document. Oh.
Anything else to
Oh,
say, Jay?
now I'm going to be tested on exactly which sheet it's on, aren't I? There it is, right
Look
there.
at that. Thank you, Anthony.
Okay.
Can you...
Is the whole thing rendered? Like the whole picture?
Well, that's...
Okay. That's the,
There we go.
There you go. So the westbound turn is, yeah, that's the tough one. And then what is the top left? That's the now vacant Quick Trip, right? That that one, yeah. That's the former QT. And then Wendy's on the top right. That's the Wendy's exit. It says entrance, but that's like the west end of the Wendy's. Yeah.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, that's the west end of the Wendy's lot. Okay, neither of those. I mean, if you're trying to go east and turn left into Wendy's, you're blocked, so you'd have to queue up, as you mentioned, in the through lane. And if you're turning into the buffet, it's going to be queued up westbound in the through lane.
Yeah.
What is it? Oh, it's the bank. Okay. So yeah, you can turn left out of either of those. What is the bottom right drive? Is that America Inn on the bottom right? Okay. Yeah, all the egress turns seem reasonable. It's the turning in that'll be tricky.
Yeah, and for reference, I think the Wendy's, I haven't studied the patterns out there, but to
They
get
go
to
in the other side.
Yeah, to
Yeah.
get to the drive-through, you need to enter in the eastern driveway to make your way around.
Yeah, this would be a much less used entrance.
Some pros over
Thank you for your expertise, Mallory. Yes, you could do either, but the fact that the second one exists makes it a less of an issue. It's more the left turn into the buffet, or yeah, that's the one really hamstrung spot. Yeah, I mean, if it provides a substantial safety margin for pedestrians, and you said there's a 900-foot roughly spread between. Yeah, I mean, I can get over my apprehension on this.
I think you hit on one of the big points too that we talked about originally, which is kind of the gateway aspect of that.
Yeah.
Really showing where the community, I gotta watch how you say that, community character is kind of changing as you're getting closer to the downtown region. Councilmember Saper, fire away.
Yes, is there any possibility, I don't have a sense of the length of the island. Is there any possibility of shortening it to maybe improve the turn-off radius there?
Yeah, I think the island is probably about 40 or 50 feet long. Sorry, Anthony, right now. For reference, that crosswalk there that you can see is 10 feet wide or 10 feet long in the direction of the street. So about another 15 feet on either end there. So yes, it could be shortened somewhat.
Is there a rationale for having it that long to begin with?
Making these mid-block crossing islands like this, you don't want to make them too short because as they get smaller, they're less visible to drivers. And drivers tend to yield less if they're smaller, and pedestrians don't feel quite as secure in them if they're smaller. They can certainly be slightly smaller than this, so that could be shortened.
Would that help resolve some of the issues that we're finding?
Not at all. It wouldn't alleviate the left turn issue because you can't queue behind it. Okay. Otherwise, yeah, you're just making a left turn like you normally would.
All right, further councilmember comments.
I'll drop the issue.
I was just going to say over in Ward 4, we have the exact same. They added the island, the turning into McDonald's got a little gray, a little hairy in the queuing, but everybody's adapted. It's just the island got bigger and it's safer to cross there. We still have to sprint across to get to Donut King because it gets a little weird and wonky up there, but make it happen. Those kids are fast. That's it.
All right, further council member comments. Seeing none, we'll thank you for coming out this evening and explaining what is going on here.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Don't forget to stop by a fine North Kansas City business on the way out of town. Pay everyone to sit here. Might as well spend some money before you leave. Number 18, consideration Chapter 100 plan for Bloom NKC project, public hearing. Staff report, Kim.
Evening, Mayor and Council. Before you this evening is the consideration of a Chapter 100 plan for the Bloom and KC project. Just to kind of go back in time a little bit, this is the last commercial property that is available in the Northgate Village TIF amendment plan. This particular project has been under consideration since 1996 by the city, and more formally since 1999 with the adoption of the Northgate Village TIF plan. This particular piece of property went through a public RFP process, and we did sign a development agreement. In fact, we've had a amended and restated development agreement with Bloom and KC, who is actually Box Development. This particular Chapter 100 was initially agreed upon within that development agreement, and what it is both a property and a sales tax Chapter 100 project. There is the property tax abatement is for a 10-year interment, and upon the completion of the project, the city will receive an annual payment of approximately $60,000 in payment in lieu of taxes. The city will receive the full pilot payment until the Northgate Village TIF plan expires in December 2032, and after that time, we will split the tax increment the pilot payments with the taxing jurisdictions for the remainder of this particular Chapter 100 time period. The city did meet with the school district about this particular Chapter 100, and there was no objections from the school district for this particular plan. I am more than happy to answer any questions you may have about this plan, and as well, I am joined this evening by Matt Webster, the city's financial advisor, as well as David Martin with Gilmore and Bell.
We are cruising along here, so I will just shortly say, excited for this project. Further council member comments at the moment? Okay, now I have to open a public hearing. Anyone from the public wishing to speak, please step up to the podium. Nobody. Okay, closing public comments. Is there a motion to close the public hearing?
Move to close.
Second.
All in favor, please say yes.
Yes. Yes.
Opposed? No. The public hearing is now closed.
Item 19, consideration of Chapter 100 plan for Bloom NKC.
First reading.
Second.
All in favor, please say yes.
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 Opposed, no. Motion carries.
An ordinance approving a plan for an industrial development project, Bloom NKC. Bloom NKC project.
I move that bill number 7704 be placed on second and final reading and pass as ordinance number 9501.
Second.
I think that's where you're throwing me off. I didn't hear the bill and ordinance from.
Oh.
Tripped me out there.
I do want to say thank you to the developer for this one. They have consistently under asked for what I would have thought they should have asked for, so they're doing us a favor by not asking for more. So thank you for being conservative in your numbers, and I look forward to the project.
All right, further council member comments? Seeing none, there was a first and second, right? Okay, there we go. Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Clark.
Yes.
Councilmember Palumbi.
Yes.
Councilmember Graves.
Yes.
Councilmember Roberts.
Yes.
Councilmember Tall.
Yes.
Councilmember Smith.
What is happening?
I don't know.
Yes.
I'm all over the place tonight. I'm throwing you guys for a loop.
Where's
Keep me on
Crystal
your
this
toes.
evening?
She's watching, so just. Councilmember Fitzgerald.
Yes.
Councilmember Roberts.
Saper.
Saper.
Oh. Councilmember Saper.
Yes.
Okay.
We're just going to do everything by voice vote.
Well, so I thought she read across. She reads down.
She goes like this.
Yes, it's on her list. It's down. I thought it was across.
Yeah, she goes down one and then down the other.
Yes. Thought she read across.
Okay.
That's where we were.
Okay. Well, then we'll blame Crystal.
Or me, because I didn't know.
She didn't give you the
Okay.
procedures tonight.
An ordinance approving a plan for an industrial development project, Bloom NKC project.
If Crystal is watching, we do love her too.
We do. All right.
No, that was it. We're done. Parks and
We're done.
Recreation Board discussion. Parks sales tax proposal. Victoria.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. As you may recall, we discussed a park sales tax and identified it as one of the top financial stewardship goals at the strategic planning retreat. And then again in January at our park board retreat, we discussed it as a possibility, as an avenue for funding our future. Missouri State Statute 644.032 states that the sales tax for the purpose of stormwater control or local parks or both may be imposed by any county or municipality up to a half-cent sales tax. So I'm here tonight to ask, I'm looking for direction and ultimately support in pursuing a permanent quarter-cent park sales tax on the April 2023 ballot. This would allow the other quarter cent to be pursued at a later date by the Parks Board again or for stormwater. So currently, the Parks and Recreation is supported by a tax levy, which is set at the maximum level. Fees from KCMO for a shared dog park, fees that we charge for services and programs, the gaming fund operations, and then other miscellaneous income. Our expenses are payroll and benefits, outside services like bank, admin, public work fees. It also is our programming expenses, utilities, supplies and materials, which include all the parks and park maintenance, and then any capital improvement projects that we fund under the fund balance. Parks has been very conservative with its fund balance to handle emergencies and plan for small capital improvement projects. This year we did the tennis court lights. Next year we're doing the restroom renovations. Our current goal and a good practice standard would be for our fund balance to have at least 1 year's expenses. So what is the park sales tax? It would be collected on retail sales made within North Kansas City and dedicated solely for the funding of local parks and related activities and improvements. A quarter-cent tax would be an additional quarter on every $100 spent within North Kansas City on applicable retail sales. Our parks, programs, and festivals bring in many people to North Kansas City, and many of those same people patronize the businesses here. They have dinner, they get gas, go to movies, breweries, the casino, shopping, and more. And because the city parks are also enjoyed by non-residents, they too would be sharing in this expense of taking care of our parks. So how much would an additional quarter-cent tax run? It would depend on the economy, but conservatively, $800,000 annually. North Kansas City currently has a lower sales tax rate than our surrounding cities of Gladstone, Parkville, KCMO, and Liberty. The benefits to the city and the parks are enormous. We have a laundry list of infrastructure items that need maintenance. This would allow us the flexibility to be proactive rather than reactive, take care of a lot of those things before they become an emergency situation. It would allow the city to no longer need to support or supplement the operations from the gaming fund. It would help us pay a competitive wage and handle increasing cost of operations. And it would give us an opportunity to set our fund balance where it should be, building that rainy day fund for unplanned emergency and planning for bigger capital improvement projects. There are also current revenue threats to our budget should the Clay County property surtax reduction pass in November. We could better prepare for growth, such as possible maintenance of River Forest Park, and it would provide dedicated revenue source that can be used annually to improve our city parks and recreation and maintain the facilities that are used by our citizens. So tonight, I'm looking for direction on how to advance this initiative and gain permission to move forward in bringing an ordinance back to this governing body, who has the authority to put it on the April 2023 ballot.
Councilmember Graves.
I would be in favor of putting it on the ballot and letting voters decide. I can vouch for the fact, I spend a lot of time at the parks. I have 2 little boys, and I can vouch for the fact that there are many people from all over the metro area that enjoy our parks. Dag Park, especially by my house, and then like baseball, for example. My kids play Little League Baseball, and there's kids from Pleasant Valley, Parkville, Northeast part of Kansas City, all over the place that play on our team. So they're all enjoying our parks, and it would be nice if when they come down to Northtown, they pay a little sales tax to benefit our parks department, and we can make massive improvements such as River Forest Park, which we're currently discussing and discussions on. And then there's other things that the residents want that we've talked about, such as outdoor basketball, skate park, things along those lines. So if we want to continue increasing and expanding our parks system, I think that this would make sense. And keep in mind that the council cannot do this. We can't vote to do this. We would just put it right on the ballot and let the voters decide. So I would be in favor of putting it out there and letting the voters make the decision.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Toll.
I think you said this in your presentation, but I missed it. I know that you said you would like to have a year's worth of expenditures saved up, but I didn't see or missed it in the slide. How much do you currently have in?
So it is
holding?
projected by the end of 2023 that we'll have about just over 900,000.
Okay.
If everything goes well.
And expenses 1.2. It cut off. It's like 1.1 something. What were the expenditures?
So the expenditures, like the amount?
Yeah,
is
it cut
about
off at the
1.2.
bottom.
Sorry.
About
Yeah.
1.2?
Yeah.
Okay. And then I know maintenance of River Forest Park would be on the Parks Department. The city is looking at possibly creating a park. Well, there's a park there. Park's there, doing something with it. But since we had our budget meeting at 6 o'clock, Kim, is there a budget item for doing something with that land? Because we've done the feasibility, like we're in the middle of the feasibility study. I wasn't sure if there was anything budgeted in the 2023.
We do not have anything budgeted for the River Forest Park development.
And is the feasibility study, when is it complete?
I'm so glad you're asked. The City Council and the Parks Board will meet next Tuesday, August 23rd, 6 p.m. right here. And the final versions of what the River Forest Park after the last public input process will be discussed, and we'll be looking forward for input from both the City Council and Parks and Recreation Board on what our next steps would be.
Okay, so that's the only other thing I would say that triggered my thought process is we are working on the budget right now. We do have time. The feasibility study is wrapping up. I think that's something that we probably need to look at getting in the budget for the next year.
Okay, one thing, I guess just comment in general for Kim. I told you this one was coming. Kind of mapping out, because the strategic plan, we did address several increases in revenues, I'll put it, including possibly TDDs, a second possible TDD for the grocery store, a use tax, the sales tax, as well as the stormwater sewer tax, or the stormwater tax, the increases in the water rates, which we're doing now. Can we put together kind of a little bit more of a list and map of over what that looks like over the next several years and the impacts that could have? Because it's, we at the strategic planning session, this is one of the things that came out of it, but so did a lot of items as well, and I want to make sure we're taking a look at all of them kind of together to see what that looks like over the years.
Yes, I would love to do some long-term fiscal planning. Some of the things that we discussed during the first budget work session was the fact that the city's financial outlook after the TIF expires, the city's financial position actually changes radically after 2032. The city will stop receiving funds from the Northgate Village TIF, and those right now are being received and then transferred back into gaming. So right now, gaming looks incredibly healthy, but it is because of those Northgate Village TIF revenues being transferred into that account. So I do think that I would love to be able to have a longer form discussion of what the city's finance looks like under a 10-year lens and what systems and decisions could be made to make that more resilient.
Yeah, thank you. I just know we talked about a lot of things. I wasn't quite ready for it. They were just the first ones to jump on one of the strategic plan items. Councilmember Smith.
So I touched on it during the streetcar piece, but I do prefer, rather than other modes of raising taxes, to do sales tax, particularly in a city like ours where, our daytime population is so significant. So you're taking the burden partially off the residents and sending, everyone that comes in and buys things in Northtown is going to be helping provide for our parks and for other expenses. So I really like this approach rather than billing our residents much higher rates for everything else. We bring in outside help for it. So I'm strongly in favor of this.
Further, Councilmember Comments. Councilmember Clark.
Yeah, just being on the Parks Board for the time that I have been there, I see all the memos, the repairs, the incidents, everything that comes up that is unplanned. So I couldn't be more for this, putting this on the ballot. Just wanted to say that. You guys are doing a great job.
It is a fantastic group to work with. I've been out a few years, but it's still a good group. I don't know why I'm pointing a saber. You always have something, nothing?
Nothing.
Okay, any further council member comments? It sounded like I heard enough to move forward with considering.
I didn't say it out loud, but I am in favor.
There we go. I guess I did not say it either, but of course we support our parks and you guys all do fantastic work. Thank you to the board members in attendance this evening as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Oh, it's an ordinance. Go ahead.
Item 21, 2-hour parking on Howell Street, Bill number 7699, ordinance number 9496.
All right, this one has come up several times from several different places. This was a request to change the parking, I'll say closest to the door at the library to 2-hour parking instead of whatever it is now, which is unlimited parking. Councilmember Smith.
So a few questions. How many spaces are we talking about?
140 feet of spaces.
So
I just had a measure from corner to corner box there.
It's approximately 6, 7
There we go.
spaces.
Six, 7 spaces. Okay. While it on the surface is like, okay, yeah, sure, we'll do that because we want library patrons parking there. My concern is that there is a big parking lot that the library has that has, if we're thinking about people with access issues or mobility issues, they would still have to go around the side of the sidewalk and then up the ramp, which would be a farther distance to go. There is a big lot that the library, it's used for the splash park as well, but mostly for library patrons. And if we do limit this, I believe the intent is to keep students from parking there. It would just push them back into the residential streets, which is, as Aaron has mentioned, as Wes has brought up a number of times, we're all aware is a constant, consistent issue. So frankly, I would rather have them park here than in the residential area. So that's my take on it. I would not approve this.
I do think you hit on one of the parks. One of the parts is the DAG Park overflow. You know what? How about this? Would the library like to speak on this item? There. Good evening. It says it's on.
Oh, sorry, I'm too short.
There.
Hi, I'm Laurie Macon. I'm the library director. The issue we have run into is there is a lot of student parking in our parking lot. So our parking lot is full. And for our patrons who are not handicapped but do have accessibility issues, the far end of our parking lot is a very long walk. There is a bit of a walk if they park on the street, but it's closer to the ramp. So that's what we were trying to help with.
So is that more of an enforcement issue where the student shouldn't be parking in your lot?
It is a public parking lot, so there's really nothing to prevent them from parking there, students and teachers.
Could we, by motion or ordinance, prevent them from parking there? I don't know how that would work.
I don't think you can
It would be
specifically
difficult to
target certain
enforce.
individuals in an ordinance. Okay. Councilmember Roberts, and then Councilmember Graves.
I don't think we can stop the students from parking in the parking lot, but we do have, control over the street access. Councilmember Smith touched on something very important that I want to emphasize, which is this is just going to push people over onto Gentry, is what it'll do, which is already, let's face it, it's the high school parking lot, as is 26th Avenue. And so the elephant in the room is the high school needs to start parking in their own parking lot. And Aaron Hansen briefly mentioned it. I've had numerous meetings with everybody you can imagine, from the high school to the police department to residents, to you name it, about this parking issue for the last year and a half. And the only solution that I can come up with, which is not ideal, but it's really the only thing that would work, is to have a resident parking system in the area immediately surrounding the high school. And what that would look like is residents would have to put a sticker on their car, saying that they're an NKC resident, and get visitor passes so that when you have guests visit at your house, if you're, got a babysitter or whatever, they would have to stick a little thing in their window. This is done in other places. This isn't like some new invention. But Chief, another aspect that people are not really thinking about is enforcement. So Chief Freeman and I were, and feel free to chime in, not we're trying to put you on the spot, but we don't currently have a parking enforcement officer. We have 0 parking enforcement officer. So you can make any ordinance that you want, but if you're not enforcing it, then it's pointless.
So let me ask this, and I'll ask this to the chief real quick, and I'll let you get back. So if the library called and said we have habitual overparkers, you guys would not do anything about it?
It would be difficult, given our current staffing situation. We are trying to utilize some, I would guess, innovative technology usage. When we had complaints at 18th and Swift with the construction parking, some recent complaints at Armour and Swift with some of the sidewalk construction, some of the parking problems that are going on there. We're attempting to use our camera network to try to help us enforce that. But again, it's a staffing issue, and we're trying to take a time and place picture of who's parked there, come back around, time and place 2 hours, and then enforce it that way versus the old chalk and stick, which is what our parking attendant does currently when we have one.
Okay, I'm sorry, please.
Yeah, so there's a bigger effort in place. I'm in favor of this, in fact, because it's actually going to exacerbate the issue on Gentry, but the library patrons need to have a place to park. The high school is using the library as their parking lot. So we got to give these people a place to park. So it brings up the issue of how do we get a parking enforcement officer? We're having trouble finding somebody, I'm told, from Chief Freeman. So I think that that's something we need to look at in our budgeting, circling back around to that conversation. And I think we need to make that a more lucrative position. And I know in past conversations with Chief Freeman, when we did have a parking enforcement officer, they were primarily in the downtown area of North Kansas City. And so if we expanded and did a resident parking, ordinance around the high school, we might even need an additional, or I think you said that right now we have a space for a part-time position. So we'd either need like what, two part-times or 1 full-time in order to make that happen, correct? Or you tell me, what would you need to actually enforce a parking ordinance?
Well, yes, I mean, there is a litany of parking ordinances on the books already that we attempt to enforce as we can. Some of them are no harm, no foul type of ordinances, but there's enough on the books right now to probably keep 2 full-time parking officers busy. So adding more would just create more of an issue.
Okay.
So we basically respond on our parking to complaints as we get them.
And I was just, sorry, I was just going to say, in our parking lot, I understand, you basically can't tell who's a student and who's a patron. So there's really no good way that I know of to enforce in our parking lot who can park there.
What about, let me ask this, maybe something in the middle here. South of the ingress egress in the library, that's all no parking on both sides. Is that necessary that is no parking on both sides?
We have a book drop.
That's just north of that.
Oh,
North of where you turn into your parking lot off of Howell there. Coming towards City Hall, there's no parking on both sides there, but plenty of, there we go. I'm about to find my reason out.
Well, it separates to 2 lanes right there. So the traffic flow separates into 2 lanes for a through straight right and then a left turn lane right there. So it would need to be remarking of the street also.
Okay. Just something to consider if you wanted to move a couple spaces to kind of offset 6. Okay. I saw Councilmember Toll. No, actually, I called Councilmember Roberts. Let me get really back on the list here. Roberts, Palumbi, Toll.
Yeah, so I think we're talking about between 6 and 8 spaces, depending on, how big did you say it is? 140
That's
feet?
from the corner, so I think there's some.
So less, you're talking probably 5 spaces. So, I mean, you're taking 5 spaces potentially away from a student. They're going to find their way somewhere anyways. I don't think I don't know if we should be, moving mountains right now to figure this whole situation out. I think we're talking about 5 spots to help the library out, and I think we should start there. And then I know Councilmember Graves has been really pushing the parking thing. It affects, us on 24th and 23rd too. We got to get it sorted out for sure. I think this is a good thing to help the library, who has been woefully overlooked this entire time. So let's get this sorted out tonight, and then maybe we could do something long-term. Of course, that relies on a lot of different things. We're talking parking enforcement, we're talking the school board, we're talking a whole lot of things, probably why it's never been figured out. But tonight, let's figure out this for the library, because we can do this. So I'm first reading here.
Okay, first reading. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Please. Yes. No, we'll continue on comments.
Yes.
All in favor, please say yes.
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 Opposed? No.
No, because I have a
Oh.
change.
Okay. We'll get to that. Okay, but you're no. Okay, there we go. Sounds like that carried. We'll call that carried. Further councilmember comments. We'll go this route now.
Can I go?
Who did I say was next? Was it you? Then please.
Okay, I have a few comments. I agree with Adam. I do think we need to tackle what's on the agenda. And I agree the parking area isn't significant, so I don't know why voting no on it would matter, because it's probably not going to change things long term. But I agree with Councilmember Graves, because I do think this is a long-term problem. I'm not really sure, because I don't live close enough to there, but what the parking situation looks like at the school itself. And because most high schools have stickers for students that says that they're a student at the school, or most universities, high schools, and so on. So I don't know how the students can identify if they were to park at the school that they're a student. So that's probably something that we need to clarify with the high school itself, to see where are these kids supposed to be parking? Do they have a big enough parking lot that would allow them all to park in the school, or are they just, is it easier for them to park at the library? Because there's got to be a reason why they're parking there.
It's free.
We've talked kind of with the school several times about this. What is the ultimate end punishment for this? So you're going to suspend a kid from school because he doesn't park his car in the right place? I mean, is that you're going to kick him out of high school and say you can't attend public schools?
Right.
So I mean, that's kind of what they run into is that worthy of that sort of punishment? Saying you're parking in public parking.
Right. So I'm assuming it would be
public
more of
parking.
like a fee, like it is for most parking, violations and whatnot. And then to kind of go along with what Councilmember Graves said, there are places that are similar in size to our area that do have a parking system where residents have to essentially put something on their cars that says that I'm a resident here, and it works in those areas. But I do run into the issue of, what if that happens on a weekend and you're going to visit a friend and you have nowhere to park your car because you don't want to get ticketed? So I do think we have a lot of things to tackle, and I think we have to start with the fact that we don't even have anyone to enforce it at the time. So all this kind of, I feel like we're jumping the gun a little bit by saying we're going to do all this stuff when we really couldn't enforce any of the things we want to do. So I think we got to start back at how do we get an enforcement with parking issues, and then kind of work from there to see how do we carry that through.
I certainly don't think throwing up 2-hour parking signs would hurt, because most people try not to. When you see that, usually you're not just jumping in there and saying, I'm just going to test this theory out and see if they come tow me or not.
Word travels
But,
fast.
yeah, you only got to catch one of them, so there we go. Let's just get the first violator, and then,
Okay.
no, Councilmember Toll. Councilmember Toll.
Thank you.
You almost got me.
I would start off by saying the students aren't doing anything wrong. They're parking in public spaces. So I just want to get that out there. They're not doing anything wrong. This is to change some of the spots. But I assume or know that this is on both sides of the street there. I'm wondering if it would make more sense to do 2-hour parking on the library side and 2-hour parking the first row up against the library building next to the ramp. As opposed to both sides of the street, would it make more sense to make that front row 2-hour parking and the street next to the library 2-hour parking?
It's not both sides of the street.
It's just the one side.
It's only the side
You
with the
can
library
fit
on it.
6 on that side?
That's what I'm hearing.
Oh, with the book drop there?
That's what I'm hearing.
It was measured to the north side of the book drop, so there should still be clearance.
I'm taking their word
Okay.
for it.
I did not stand out there when that measurement happened, but I'd assume we are good. Kim did, so I.
Yeah, it's just the side with the library.
Okay.
Okay,
did I say
given the
something?
number of cars, I thought, oh, it must be both sides. So I take that back and would amend my vote to yes.
Okay. I saw Saper, and then we'll go Graves here.
Yes, we do have larger issues to deal with in terms of the multiplicity of factors involved. We do have, yeah, and we have, so let's deal with that later. Right now, the library board is just asking for half a dozen spaces right next to the building that would have a 2-hour limit. Now, will that be enforced? If it can be enforced, gee, it makes a great experiment for maybe a larger solution later on. So let's go ahead and approve it.
Well, further, okay, there we go. Councilmember Graves.
I totally agree. Let's go ahead and approve this. And then can we please put some type of, because this is a huge discussion topic, and I would like to go ahead and formally proceed with discussing doing a resident parking permit system around the high school and try to hammer out what that would look like. So can we please put that on the upcoming agenda? Because also, Ward 3, guess what? 26th Avenue is full of angry people, and they're now in your ward. And so it's actually a big deal, because in previous years, it was hard to get anything resolved on parking because there was only 2 council members that heard about it. Now there's half the council you're gonna get tons of parking complaints now
All
from
right,
people
we
on
can
26.
cue that up into a work session sometime in the.
And then just one other comment, Councilmember Palumbi brought up, and Councilmember Toll, the students are not doing anything wrong right now. They're just, and I've met with the high school and had many discussions. They tell me that they have ample parking available. I've asked them, do you have enough spots? And they say yes. All it really is people, it's human nature. You want to park in the closest distance between you want to walk the shortest distance between your car and the front door. And so it's students, it's faculty, et cetera. And it is a big deal because there are some people on Gentry that don't have a driveway, for example. Or, there was a lady that was hosting Bible studies and couldn't have people come over to her house. So that's a long discussion. We'll go next time. But yes, let's move this on.
All right. Did I tell someone I was going to call on them and haven't yet? No,
Thank
everybody
you.
spoke. There we go. Who?
Parliamentarian time.
No, okay. So we have first. Okay, we're done. You need to read, right?
Yes.
There we go.
An ordinance restricting on-street parking for 2 hours on the east side of Howell Street, extending south 140 feet from 23rd Avenue in the city of North Kansas City, Missouri, and directing the erection of appropriate signage limiting the parking of motor vehicles to 2 hours on said street.
I move that Bill number 7699 be placed on second and final reading and pass as ordinance number 9496.
Second.
I'm scared to ask any further council member comments. Okay, seeing none, call the roll, please.
Okay, Councilmember Clark. Yes. Councilmember Palumbi.
Yes.
Councilmember Graves.
Yes.
Councilmember Saper.
Yes.
Councilmember Tall.
Yes.
Councilmember Smith.
Yes.
Councilmember Fitzgerald.
Yes.
Councilmember Roberts.
Yes.
An ordinance restricting on-street parking to 2 hours on the east side of Howell Street, extending south 140 feet from 23rd Avenue in the city of North Kansas City, Missouri, and directing the erection of appropriate signage limiting the parking of motor vehicles to 2 hours on said street.
That's quite the title. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Number 18, 18th and Swift Easement Agreement, Bill number 7702, ordinance number 9499. Mr. Barcy.
Mr. Mayor, excuse me. Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, before you this evening is an easement agreement that would, if adopted, would authorize the construction of balconies at the 18th and Swift Apartments over city right-of-way. On the north side, which would be the amount is less than a foot that they would extend, although we've given, after consulting with our codes people, it would be advantageous to add a few inches to that for any construction variances that might occur. And on the east side of the building along Swift, they would extend a little bit less than 4 feet. And again, a few extra inches have been added onto that. Our concerns in this matter, we felt strongly that we needed, unlike typically in an easement, we needed the ability under certain circumstances to be able to control our right-of-way and to protect the public health, safety, and welfare. And so in order to do that, this document provides for certain termination rights that the city, acting through the city council, after giving due notice to the owner, giving the owner the opportunity to discuss this with the council, if you will, it would give the city the right to terminate it, to accomplish these things. In other words, primarily what we're dealing with is protecting the right-of-way if for some reason we may need that right-of-way in the future. Now, you might say, well, these aren't on the ground. It's a little bit different. In fact, where they come out from the building, it's not until extend into our right-of-way until the 4th story, which is 35 feet 8 inches above the ground level, plus or minus, okay? And so, they're not going to be a tripping hazard or any other pedestrian-type hazard. But we don't know what the future might lie with respect to the need of that right-of-way. And so that's one area. Also, the operation of that, we were also concerned about possible, tenants that don't use good judgment, meaning they put a flower pot on the corner of the railing and a big wind comes along or someone bumps it, it falls off and hits someone, okay? And also having participated, I'm afraid, unfortunately that it happened, our firm filed the very first lawsuit in the Hyatt Regency Skywalk's collapse matter. Things like this are going to have to be required to be maintained by an owner. Now, the good news is I truly believe we have a very conscientious owner of this property. Now, that's a very big plus, I think, on our end. In fact, in discussing it with the owner is 18th and Swift LLC. Nevertheless, at the end of the day, Americo Insurance Inc., or whatever the exact name is, their legal counsel is with us this evening, Ian DeGallen, who I've worked with now. This has taken a number of months to get to this point. The good news is our codes people, as they were going through the plans originally, this was noted. It was noted in a letter to their engineer at Olson that they would need to get, they use the term license agreement. This would be an easement agreement, but nevertheless, it is an agreement that can be brought to a close. Finally, because of its permanency, and hopefully for them it would be permanent, that there's not some problem or an issue where we might need it. But nevertheless, we recognize that what would be an appropriate amount of insurance, liability insurance on their part today may not be satisfactory in the future. So we have the right to change it, the amount of insurance that they have to have from time to time is what the agreement says. That would be done, with your blessing, that will simply be done administratively, and that would be a fair and reasonable amount of insurance. But we know what $1 million was 10 years ago is not really the same as $1 million today and going on into the future. This is going to be a building that'll be there presumably for a number of years. As I indicated, Mr. DeGallen is here this evening. He'd be glad to answer any specific questions you have. But this is something that's pending before you now. Thank you.
I saw half this dais going up here. Councilmember Saper.
Yes. If we wanted to reclaim that space, who would be responsible for paying for it? In other words, dismantling the overhang.
Under the agreement, the owner of the property, okay, which would be 18th and Swift, at least as far as I could remember, it will be 18th and Swift LLC. They have that obligation. If they don't do it under the agreement, we have the right to do it, and they have a number of days then to reimburse us.
Okay, the next question is, the current owners may be as responsible as you say, but as we know in the business world, a year from now, 5 years from now, it could be an entirely different set of owners that wouldn't be as responsible. So I think it's important that we have these protections for the city built into this agreement.
And I believe that we have that protection in here.
Okay.
From an insurance standpoint and from the ability to be able to terminate.
Councilmember Tull.
I agree that that's important for a learning for the future. I'm complicit in this as well. I'm part of the committee that would have passed these plans, but it would have had to make it through several steps and people and different companies before being built where the balconies are overhanging over the sidewalk. So at what point should we have caught this error?
Well, I don't think we caught it from the very beginning. There's a letter here from actually when Mallory had a different thing. It stated
So this was agreement
January
prior.
14th,
Okay.
2020.
Okay, so we knew all along. This isn't a bandage. It's something that we agreed to, and this is just, now that it's built, getting it formalized.
It was actually a condition of the approval of their master plan development,
Okay,
which
all right.
you would have approved, yes.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
And the then developer, Sunflower Inc., did in fact acknowledge that in a return letter to the city, that they had this obligation to do this.
All right, Councilmember Smith.
In the unfortunate flower pot scenario that you played out earlier, what happens? I mean, are we on the hook because we gave some right of way? Are they on the hook because somebody dropped a flower pot? I mean, I just got hit in the head with a flower pot. What happens?
They're going to be in the middle of it, but since it's in our right of way, we want to make sure we're protected, and that's why we would be named as an additional named insured in their insurance policy.
Okay. And it's typical for these balconies to overhang public sidewalks? Maybe I'm just not paying attention when I walk around in cities, but is it normal to have this go on?
I cannot answer that question, Councilman. I'm sorry.
Just feels a little out of whack to be walking directly under where people are, putting flower pots on railings and, could just drop something on you.
No flower pots on railings.
Please don't.
What restrictions do they have on usage of the balcony? I mean, these are rental units, so I'm assuming they have terms of, you can do this, you can't do that on your balcony.
Mr. DeGallen, you want to step to, if you have any,
Good-
up
good-
to the
good
microphone.
evening.
Hello.
Welcome.
Hello. At this point, we don't have a draft lease prepared yet for our residents, so there are no formal restrictions.
Do you intend to have restrictions, I guess would be the
Yeah,
follow-up.
yeah, absolutely. We're, as to the length of ownership, this is an opportunity zone investment, so 10 years minimum, right? So we're in there for at least 10. I don't know if that helps. The other part of it is, I'm happy to work with Tom to come up with a couple of things, like, for example, unrelated, but the new parking lot going in, we will restrict our residents from parking in that lot. Similarly, we'd be more than happy to have, anything falls off the balcony, you're out. We're not going to have, we're not going to tolerate that kind of thing, right? You throw stuff off the balcony, you're out.
Okay, was there further? Oh, was that you? You were up.
It was.
Okay, Councilmember Smith.
No, I mean, I fully appreciate that. The most likely scenario is not the flower, it's you're hanging out having a beer with your buddies on the balcony and you missed the railing and people are walking around underneath. That's the thing that scares me, is having this out there. Now, if we don't approve this easement, the balcony shrinks by a foot and it's still the same problem, I'd imagine, so.
Well, really, I think because this has been a condition that was approved from the very beginning,
Right.
I think the fallback position would be it becomes a license rather than an easement, which at this point I think is kind of a meaningless distinction, particularly given the fact that this is an easement that reads a lot more like a license.
Yeah.
So I understand your concern, and I don't know if there's a good solution. I just, again, we can't be guarantors of everything, and so since we can't be guarantors of everything, we carry a lot of insurance.
Right, and I appreciate the insurance. I'm just worried about the actual injury rather than how we pay for it after the fact.
I understand.
There's just no way around it.
It's a lousy consolation, I agree, but it's something.
So let me ask one question on design here. Is there any sort of overhangs or, I don't know what you call that, any sort of overhang on the lower levels to prevent something, say something did inadvertently get knocked off? Is there anything in the interim that could?
Right now, there are no awnings shown on the
There we
plan.
go. That was a struggle to get that out. Thank you. Councilmember Clark.
We're saying that the balconies were approved in the original, January 2020. Is that all the way around the building, which I think most of us haven't really recognized balconies to go all the way around the building? Or is it just to allow balconies, but not necessarily over city?
The bracket's already there.
We have balconies on all four sides of the building.
Yeah,
Only two of those.
You're talking this specific?
Yeah,
agreement
like
here.
this specific one.
This
like-
covers, along Swift and along 18th.
As far as like our obligation to honor what the approved drawings were,
That would be
is
back to
it
Tom.
absolutely that this is a part of that approval? Like, it's not just limited to maybe over the parking lot, we have to just allow maybe only some small area and we're still within our means? I just have to ask the question.
It's, yes, it was on the original set of plans, from what I've been told, okay? These are a few of those pages. There was even a balcony page, and this was in red. But they were told at that early stage, their engineer was, clearly that they needed to get, a license agreement with the city to be in the right-of-way at any location. Reason there's balconies up on two sides right now, on the south and the west sides, is because that's not in right-of-way. I don't really have anything more, but it was on the, I have to tell, it was on the drawings. There's no question about that.
First reading?
All in favor, please say yes.
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 Opposed, no. Motion carries.
An ordinance adopting and approving an easement agreement by and between the City of North Kansas City, Missouri and 18th and Swift LLC for the use of certain public street rights-of-way immediately contiguous to the vertical plane of the property known as East 18th Avenue and immediately contiguous to the vertical plane of the west boundary of the property known as Swift Street in the City of North Kansas City, Missouri.
I move that bill number 7702 be placed on second and final reading and passes ordinance number 9499.
Second.
Any further councilmember comments? Seeing none, call the roll, please.
Councilmember Clark.
Yes.
Councilmember Palumbi.
Yes.
Councilmember Graves.
Yes.
Councilmember Saper.
Yes.
Councilmember Tall.
Yes.
Councilmember Smith.
Yes.
Councilmember Fitzgerald.
Yes.
Councilmember Roberts.
Yes.
An ordinance adopting and approving an easement agreement by and between the City of North Kansas City, Missouri and 18th and Swift LLC for the use of certain public street rights-of-way immediately contiguous to the vertical plane of the property known as East 18th Avenue and immediately contiguous to the vertical plane of the west boundary of the property known as Swift Street in the City of North Kansas City, Missouri.
You got a 3-chapter title there.
That's a
Thank
good
you for
one.
bringing
Thank
us.
you very much.
Thank you. Number 23, approving accounts due and payable by the city through August 12, 2022. Bill number 7705, ordinance number 9502.
First
First
reading.
All in favor, please say yes.
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 Opposed?
Yes.
No. Motion carries.
An ordinance authorizing payment for certain accounts due and payable by the city through August 12, 2022.
I move that bill number 7705 be placed on second and final reading and passes ordinance number 9502.
Second.
Councilmember Clark.
Yes.
Councilmember Palumbi.
Yes.
Councilmember Graves.
Yes.
Councilmember Saper.
Yes.
Councilmember Tall.
Yes.
Councilmember Smith.
Yes.
Councilmember Fitzgerald.
Yes.
Councilmember Roberts.
Yes.
An ordinance authorizing payment for certain accounts due and payable by the city through August 12, 2022.
Fantastic. Staff comments.
In your packet tonight's the upcoming city items of note, also the Business Council's annual report. Aside from that, Victoria and Kim have some additional comments for you. So I'm going
All right, who's
to pass
up?
it off to Victoria.
I just wanted to mention that we set the ribbon cutting for the Diamond One finally for September 1st. I've sent you all an email. And festivities will start about 3:30. And then this Friday night, we have our last Friday night movie in the park, Sing 2. And at 5 o'clock, we have a back-to-school bash starting. So send the kids out.
Fantastic. Thank you. Kim.
Just a few items for your calendars. The first one is just don't forget that next Tuesday, August 23rd, 6 p.m., right here, City Council and Parks meeting to discuss the River Forest Park feasibility study, and we would like to get some direction from the City Council and the Parks Board at that time. Another thing for your calendars is the Tuesday after that. We're seeing you guys every Tuesday this month, just in case you hadn't noticed. We do have the last budget work session. That will be August 30th. It'll be right here at 6 p.m. And then just a quick fun thing is on Thursday, August 25th at 10 a.m., we will be hosting Briarcliff Elementary here at City Hall. We will have about 50-plus students learning all about what local government does and hopefully asking lots of questions. So City Council members, if you are available, feel free to stop by for that. We are really looking forward to that. That was something that we were hoping to be able to get done last school year, but the calendar just didn't quite happen. So.
All right, fantastic. Thank you. With that, is there any council member comments? Should I give that a try? Any council member comments this evening?
Looking forward to the 23rd.
I'm trying a new approach here. Councilmember Graves.
Yeah,
I'll save
actually,
her to something.
I do.
Fine.
I forgot last week to, I wanted to give a special thank you to Mike over at ProPrint, Mike Hayes. He really stepped up, and all these signs you see around town about supporting our local police department with the American flag with the blue line on it, ProPrint here in town, he really stepped up and made stickers and signs and banners and you name it. So I wanted to thank him. Secondly, we already talked about the high school parking, and then just want to mention yesterday, saw another golf cart driving around town, construction worker at 23rd and Swift. So I don't know how else to ask very politely. Can we please put that on the agenda to do a golf cart ordinance? They're already being used. I keep seeing them in between council meetings. I'll see another one this week, and let's just go ahead and legalize them. They're already being used. That's it. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilmember Saper did not like my
No
new method of doing
comments
this here.
tonight.
Oh, there we go. Is there any further councilmember comments?
I do.
Councilmember Toll.
I just wanted to say we had some excellent presentations today, so thank you to the Business Council. I thought that was really well done and informative, and the streetcar was very informative, and also, I know that we're trying to wrap it up, but
Did you feel that?
I could feel it. I could feel the stare. I will be here for the Briar Cliff. I'm excited for that as well.
We got to get some music in here so I can start. Now, Mike was waving at me there.
Yeah, I want to apologize. I went over Anthony during staff comment. He had something for staff comments, and sorry, I didn't get that.
Sorry.
So I wanted to come back to that.
Just a quick item for everyone's awareness. MoDOT is going to be repaving Vernon, or in Route 1, from the McDonald's entrance north to the city limits, and then all the way to I-35, actually, is their entire project. So that's going to start probably the latter of this week, but they're going to start maybe mobilizing and getting things out there, but that's just for everyone's awareness, something coming.
All right, further council member comments? Seeing none. No more. We done with staff comments this time? We good? Okay, thank you. Oh, you're shaking your head no. That means there are more.
Where do you think I'm coming from?
Oh. You're shut off for the rest of the night. Okay, number 20. Okay, we're skipping number 27. We no longer need that. Number 28 is consideration of a request to hold into recess an executive session as requested by the city administrator to be held on this date on a litigation matter pursuant to Missouri Revised Statute 610-0211.
Move to approve.
Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Clark.
Yes.
Councilmember Palumbi.
Yes.
Councilmember Graves.
Yes.
Councilmember Saper.
Yes.
Councilmember Toll.
Yes.
Councilmember Smith.
Yes.
Councilmember Fitzgerald.
Yes.
Councilmember Roberts.
Thank you. Oh, dang, I got to make my final announcement. With that, the Channel 2 feed will cut off, the live YouTube feed will cut off. There'll be no further public business or votes this evening. Thank you. Just one executive session, and it'll be in this corner. This corner. Before everyone goes that way. Yep.